Good evening and welcome to the extended version of the Mr. Frostbite blog, the ending blog for 2021, which I've entitled Close to You. After the lockdowns and restrictions of 2020, I think we hoped for a much different 2021, a time of more freedoms and more places to go, more travels to have, and perhaps the end of COVID. I wonder if we actually got what we hoped for. At the start of the year, I'd made all kinds of plans, and I hoped, of course, they were all going to come into fruition. Things were looking good. And we went into what we remember now was a Tier 4 restriction. Can anybody remember the tiering system? It seems an age ago. Derbyshire, where I am, and of course most of England went into Tier 4, and that scuppered all kinds of ideas and plans I had for travel. It started cold, it started beautiful, and I'd made plans to go to the Scottish Highlands, to ski in the Italian Dolomites, and the whole lot was scrapped. And, well, what can you do? We make plans, we have to make plans. And I'd made those plans in the autumn of 2020, hoping for a brighter 2021. Sadly, times change quickly, and they did change very quickly indeed. In fact, by January the 4th, that seems another age ago, we were in full lockdown. Who can remember that? And events started to be cancelled. They cancelled the Glastonbury Festival, the Isle of Man TT, and at the time I thought, crikey, they're being a bit overcautious. Looking back at it now, I'd say they were being incredibly clever and forward-thinking, because we all knew what the summer brought. On the 2nd of February, we lost what I think was a man who should be called a legend, Captain Sir Tom Moore, a man who had walked into our lives really after a military career and an industrial career. He decided to walk 100 laps of his garden for charity, and that in itself was a wonderful thing. What for me was more wonderful was this gentleman's attitude. He wanted to help others in any way that he could. He didn't need to shout, he didn't need to protest and stomp and break down statues. He just went on to inspire so many other people, in fact probably inspiring the world, through this man's attitude, peacefulness, demeanour, and just being a lovely, lovely gentleman. And those, I think, are the people that should be inspiring us, not the people that scream and shout and rant on about things. It's the people that actually go and get the job done. I continued speaking, and I've been speaking right through all the lockdowns, and of course at the start of 2021, more lockdowns, more work on Zoom, and a lot of my school's work was quite interesting because people said, yes, you do mountaineering and you do adventure speaking and climbing and frostbite and wonderful. Can you do science? Can you do space? Well, yes. I've grown up in engineering. I've grown up with open eyes. I adored space. I used to stare through a telescope as a child. And so not only over Zoom was I doing mountaineering and resilience and trying to inspire youngsters to do something with their lives, I was doing experiments with magnetism and electricity. We were covering spaceflight, the solar system, travel. And when you're my age, remembering Voyager and the other sort of satellites and probes being launched in the 70s, and they are still going out there somewhere in the darkness of space. One thing I learned very quickly with the initial lockdowns was to invest in your office, and I did so. I put some money in there so that I sounded more professional, the backgrounds were professional, it wasn't something you just stole off the internet. And that paid dividends, and it didn't cost a lot of money. People think you have to spend thousands, you don't. But ask. There's plenty of people out there will help you. And I was absolutely delighted to work with a number of schools and businesses during the first lockdowns. My engineering work, of course, was still ongoing, and I've worked in professional electrical engineering for over 30 years. And I'm not one for banging the drum about myself, but we very quietly got on with work in the background. we tried to keep the lights on the best that we could. And people have to remember that without electricity, you will quite literally be in the dark ages. But one of the greatest lessons we've learned through all the lockdowns has been the use of the internet and the requirement, the need for shopping, for working, for communication, for looking at this blog now. And yet without electricity, you would have no internet at all. And I wonder if people truly appreciate that. During November of this year in England, we had, and Wales and Scotland too, and Ireland, we had heavy snows. And people are quick to complain, you know, my lights have gone off and it's all terrible and we live in a third world country, is a phrase I've heard a lot. It's all very good complaining when things go wrong, but you never praise people when they're quietly working in the background, doing things to keep you working and to keep you happy and warm and illuminated and busy and entertained. And we've got to remember that those people have been working, and not just us, many people in many industries have kept the home fires burning, the machines turning, and the web on. Now, things, of course, do go wrong. I had a day in the summer, oh dear. I was trying to get some work done and my iMac went bang. It's not what you want in the middle of a lockdown. Within a few minutes, I'd gone outside, came back into the house, opened the door handle, which snapped in my hand, and then punched into my hand and blood was pouring out. And by the end of the day, my ensuite had flooded and poured water into my garage. Well, they always say things come in threes. It's not what you want at any time, but in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of the stress and everything else, I wonder how some people would react. Now, initially, I was obviously very shocked and irritated. But very quickly, I just said, Nigel, what are you worrying about? You're fit and healthy, you're well. And there's the old phrase that the chaos or failure or fault of today is the joke of tomorrow. And it was. And I bought a new iMac and sorted the door handle, and the showers are now fine, and my garage is not turning into a waterfall. But we have to remember, pandemic or not, stress or not, whatever, the world does go on. The spring in the UK ended cold and sunny, and I got lots of time to go walking, cycling, swimming locally. I still wasn't prepared to push and go too far. And I noticed a lot on social networking of people saying, yes, I'm not going far, I'm just driving 30, 50, 80 miles. And I still disagree with some of that even now. I was happy to stay local. And I was happy to stay local for another number of reasons. Just because we have freedoms doesn't mean we should exercise them all the time. But also I'd got other things at home to keep me very, very, very busy. I took some decisions this year, and one of the decisions was to break away from a number of organisations and trusts I've been connected with for a while. And why did I do that? Well, in my view, the relationship has run its course. And we shouldn't be in these kind of relationships forever anyway. We should work and benefit each other. And when they become stale, and as I found with myself, I became a nice to have, it's time to say adieu. I want to work with people who want to work with me. I want to work with people who want to engage with me, and I engage with them, and we benefit off each other. It's not a one-way street. I want to work with organisations that I have perhaps a personal connection with, and two that really came out the woodwork this year was that I was voted as president of Buxton Mountain Rescue Team. And I've been part of the team for a while, not operational, more in the background, but it was an absolute delight and honour to be asked to be president. I've also been taken on as an ambassador of the Martin Moran Foundation. And I climbed with Martin for many years as a client and a friend. And it was a tragedy when he was lost a few years ago. And a foundation has been set up in his name to get people into the outdoors and give them the mountaineering leadership experience they need to further their careers in the outdoors. And I've been a great supporter of both of those this year, and I will continue to do so. Some people might say, but by leaving these things or by saying these things, are you being provocative, Nigel? Well, of course I am. I'm not trying to be unpleasant. What I'm trying to say is relationships are two-way streets. You should never be taken for granted. You should never be a nice to have. You should never be left in the background. Two-way street every time. Work together and share each other's benefits. During September, my Becoming X video and story launched, and this goes back way before COVID, when I recorded my Becoming X film at the same time as Sir Ranulph Fiennes. And it was launched by Paul Gurney, a great friend of mine, in partnership with Bear Grylls, and it's the story of my Alaskan exploits. The video is attached to the blog. And I joined somehow this wonderful lineup of international sports stars, scientists, politicians, athletes, magicians, all kinds of people, and me. And sometimes, you know, you just don't have to be that big name. We all have a story. It's how we use that story and how we cheer to share that story and the positive things that we can do with it that truly shine through. And I hope by sharing my experiences, and I do that freely, that I can inspire other people to do something positive with their lives. And hopefully they will then share their time and experiences, because time is one of the greatest things we can share. More decisions this year, and some very tough ones as well. Because not only did I have to work out about who I was working with and how I was going to work with them, but I was still caring for my elderly mother, and I had to do a lot of fighting on her behalf. Sadly, dementia started to take hold, and it's a heartbreaking thing. If any of you have experienced this with a family member and you see dementia taking hold, it's cruel. It's the only word I can think of. It's cruel. And I worked tirelessly to support my mother. We'd lost my father a couple of years ago, and she was on her own with severe macular degeneration, tough as nuts, wartime child, but still struggling. She was also quite stubborn, which didn't help. On a number of occasions, people within professional organisations said, "Mr. Vardy, leave her. Let her be. Abandon her. Walk away. She's got to get on with life on her own or learn on her own." And I said no. Now, that came at a price and a cost I'll speak about later. But I said no. Somebody has to support her. Yes, she can be stubborn. Yes, she can be hard work. We all can. But I do not walk out on my family and the people I love. We only lived a mile apart, and I was there doing most things for her, in the fact of, when you struggle to see, you're in your 80s, you don't understand the internet, all the kind of things that the modern world, and particularly COVID, has brought on, everything you can get on the web, which is no good when you're half blind and don't understand it. If we don't have people that support us, we're in a terrible position. It's also, of course, the fact that the internet and many organisations now are driven by tick boxes. They're driven by politics, by budgets, and I don't care. I am not interested in people's problems when it comes to, we don't have a tick box for that. What I was bothered about is supporting my mother and trying very, very hard to keep a smile on her face. And I do wonder, is that really too much to ask for? Obviously, a combination of that, working, caring, and everything else, really curtailed major travels for me this year. Most of my time was invested in caring for my mum, and I have absolutely no regrets of that at all. It was very tiring, I assure you, and I was absolutely exhausted a lot of the time. But again, you don't abandon your family. We certainly learnt that on McKinley all those years ago. You don't abandon people on the mountain. You stay with them, you get them off, you do what you can. I would not abandon my family. Again, I was advised to walk away. Again, I was advised to leave her to it. And then in November, the world changed. After a brief spell in care, my mother was taken into hospital, and an enormous roller coaster of emotion and everything I can imagine hit me and my mother. She was incorrectly diagnosed with COVID, which of course, as you can probably imagine, causes all kinds of entertainment. She was taken in and treated for pneumonia, moved wards repeatedly, told to be discharged, not discharged. Yes, she has COVID. No, she doesn't have COVID. She definitely doesn't have COVID. No, we're trying to discharge her. No, we're not. And this went on. And how anybody can remain sane in a situation like that fails me. And that's from my point of view. Imagine being my mum lay in the bed. How must that feel to them? Regardless of what doctors and consultants said, their long-term views about there's nothing wrong with your mum's observations, I shall never forget that phrase. Within a few days, she was gone. I'm thankful that my sister and I were with her at the end. And I can distinctly remember, and I will never ever forget this, sitting with my mum in her last few hours holding her hand. And she saying to me, please don't leave me, I'm scared. I can feel my spine going even now. She left us the next day. And when you've lost both your parents, it's a very unusual feeling. I'm at peace with the fact that she's gone, but it's a huge void. It's a massive piece of your life that disappears, and it disappeared very quickly. And if anybody ever doubts the fact that we should be committed and love our families, we should be generous, we should be helpful, we should be loving, if anybody doubts that, I think they need to take a very, very long and serious look at themselves. Because imagine your end of days, whenever that happens to be, and imagine lying there being scared on your own with nobody else around. How would you feel? On top of all that, and I think partly because of the exhaustion, and even though I was triple vaccinated, I tested positive for COVID just before Christmas. And I think the last 2 years of care and everything else just took its toll. And with all the wonderful Christmas plans put together, I was forced to self-isolate. But I'm not going to scream about it. I'm not going to strop about it. I'm not going to moan and complain and say I can't cope, because I can't change the decision. And if you can't change the decision, why are you complaining? You just have to get on with it. Now, it's not all been doom and gloom. I've had excellent support, and, I'm ending the year very, very happy. My heart is happy. I'm almost snot-free now. There's still a bit of coughing and sneezing going on, but I'm doing pretty well. I really, really am. So 2021 wasn't the easiest year of my life, crikey. But no years are ever easy. None of them are a breeze. Everything has its ups and downs. We've just got to embrace them, get on with life, and continue living, if we are going to keep learning and keep pushing forwards, because that's all we can do. I hope you've had an excellent year, and may I wish you, your families and your friends, the most wonderful 2022, and I pray that you're all very safe, very well, and can live your dreams, as I hope you always do. And in the immortal words of Dave Allen, may your gods go with you. Happy New Year.